Diamond Heart and Training Institute Audio, Video, and Monographs is proud to present A.H. Almaas in his teaching given on April 20th, 2002, for the release of his new book, Spacecruiser Inquiry.
And good evening, everybody. So, I'm supposed to talk a little bit about the new book, which is really about a particular practice that is connected with the work we do. It's the central practice. And we call the practice Inquiry. But you also notice that the title of the book is Spacecruiser Inquiry. So it's inquiry, but a particular kind of inquiry. So I was thinking, how to enter into that. And if you look at the book, you see there's so many things in it. So I was thinking of when I first started myself in that direction, which reminds me of time when I was in my early teens. And I was not a particularly spiritual person, at least not consciously. I was not thinking of spiritual things. But what I remember is that being in the midst of a particular environment, culture, and school, there are all kinds of things that impact me at that time. Religion and ideologies and different kind of sciences and researches. And I remember at that time feeling that I couldn't buy most of it. Right, when I looked at religion, sounded interesting, good, but I didn't know, whether it was true or not, about God or whatever. I didn't feel like an atheist, believing there's no such thing. I just felt I didn't really know, and I needed to know before I can say good or yes. So it was my sort of semi-conscious determination that I really wanted to know. I wanted to find out what is the truth that is not a belief, that is not given by other people. What is the truth of reality as it stands on its own? And it wasn't possible to get that by reading about it or hearing about it or studying it in school the way things were being taught. And it's not like a big conscious determination. It's more like looking back at it. I remember it wasn't part of the element of just being a teenager in school at that time, and I was interested in school, that there was a background feeling of wanting to know what is the truth of reality. What is it really? What is really here? What is really there? What is it? What's it about? What I am? What is the world? And people say God, what's that? People say I love God. Who said I should? People say union with God. Who said that's for me? People talk about enlightenment. I didn't know there was such a thing or not. So there was this attitude of basically wanting to know or to find out, to directly ascertain what is true. And that, it seems, was that the motivating force behind me choosing to go into the sciences instead of going to the humanities or the arts, because all these seem subjective to me. I wanted something that's not influenced by somebody's mind. So I thought at that time, studying science, what will be a good way to find out what is the truth. And mind you, I was a kid. I wasn't really thinking of ultimate truth or anything like that. It was like a semi-conscious kind of a feeling, and that became important only later on, looking back at it, in some sense, in my mind. So I went into the sciences, and I was very good at them. And that is how I actually came to the United States. I was born in Kuwait, in an old traditional Middle Eastern culture, a culture actually that doesn't exist anymore. So I had a good enough environment and good enough parenting, and I wasn't oppressed or abused or misused. But there were the usual influences, religious, ideological, all kind of thing, cultural. And for some reason, I didn't want to be influenced by them. Of course, I couldn't help but be influenced by them, but I knew I had a desire not to be influenced. I wanted to see and experience independently from that. And so I went to the sciences and came to this country because I went into physics, and at that time, I remember some kind of orientation meeting, so we're going to physics, where can you go for physics? At that time there were two countries that were said the best place in physics, the United States and Germany. And my teacher at that time, who happened to be somebody I liked, who studied in the United States, and he thought, go to the United States, really wonderful there. I did. That's how it happened. So I came to this country, went to school, and went to the university here in Berkeley. And then I went through usual college and graduate school in physics and mathematics, and only toward the end of my graduate work, when I was working in my dissertation, that it was becoming clear to me that it's like I started to wake up or to become aware that that is not what I really wanted. And I started feeling I didn't want, and by looking around me at all the professors and students, and I saw very clearly at some point, I didn't want to be like that. That is not, for some reason, something opened in my heart, and I recognized from a feeling place that's not the truth I was looking for. That wasn't going to be it. So that's the time I started doing things, going to groups, studying with different people, and reading books, and started interested in spiritual books, and studying with some teachers, doing workshops, and being in groups. And of course, what happens in many of those places, you're given law practices. And I remember the practices that I tried from many traditions. Meditation, prayers, visualization, chanting various different kind of yogic things, and doing them for a while, and I was very earnest, and I think not consciously, but I was unconsciously wanting to find what the truth is. At some point it occurred to me that I was having a hard time. I didn't know how to do those things. I couldn't do them. I couldn't visualize anything. I closed my eyes, I couldn't see anything. When I try to meditate, my back hurts and I can't stop thinking. And in all these yogic concentration things, I kept getting distracted. I realized I couldn't do them, and had difficulty with doing all of them. I've had some experiences, true. But it became very clear to me that I was having a difficulty in doing any of those traditional practices. And at some point, I became aware that not only I was bad at them, I really didn't like them. It's like I wanted to find the truth. I didn't want somebody to tell me, go do this, and you're going to find such truth. Who said that that's the truth? Right? You know, meditation, you get to be enlightened. You pray to get closer to God. I wasn't still convinced about those things, whether that's what I wanted or whether there was such a thing like that. But I also realized that I had some kind of resistance, some kind of reluctance to do all these practices, partly because I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for anything specific. It was like a vague feeling. But at the same time, I realized all these things were things imposed, things I have to impose on me. It's not something I will do every day. It's not an everyday natural thing that you do. To actually sit with straight back for a whole hour not moving and visualize your perineum is a very unnatural thing. And something about that sort of didn't click with me. I wasn't, I've never been the esoterically oriented kind of person. I'm not really interested in the esoteric and the unusual and the strange and all of that. So I wasn't turned on by those. So partly they were difficult for me, but partly they felt artificial. Like it is something extra to what naturally happens to a human being. It's true, sometimes these things occur naturally. Once in a while I'm in a quiet place, I'm still. Sometimes I'm prayerful place, things like that. But to actually do these in some kind of a regular practice, at that time, I'm not knocking these things. I'm just saying, for me personally, at that time, it felt too artificial. And I realized I couldn't do them because I didn't want to do anything extra to just living a normal life and finding out what reality is. And then, as I was becoming aware of that, I noticed like there are certain times that things opened up. And I began to experience things much deeper, clearer, more open way than was my normal experience. And usually they did not happen when I was meditating. When I was meditating, I'm too busy with my back pain, my knee pain, I remember, and they said if you stay in a retreat, a long enough retreat, you'll go beyond it. I tried that. I went beyond it only the last day, I remember. So by the last day, it became clearer. But, I'm not knocking them. I'll come back to them. It took a long time before I recognized at some point the logic behind these things and how they work. But at that time, I didn't see the logic. And since I was already somehow unconsciously motivated by the desire to know things in an objective sense, not in a natural sense, I had a natural reluctance to do something that appeared to me to be artificial. But I noticed at a certain time when things opened up. And one of those times that it kept happening every once in a while is that I noticed that I was really interested, I was earnest, and in terms of practices, in terms of wanting to study myself, study reality. But the only time that thing opened up had to do with a particular condition that I found myself in, that at the beginning I didn't know how it happened, which is at some point it's like pushing and feeling frustrated, nothing is happening, and not getting through, I'm not finding out anything. At some point, I realized I give up, like giving up. I feel helpless, can't do it, I don't know how to do it. I don't know what the hell is supposed to happen, right? And it's like some kind of a helplessness and a giving up and recognition. Not only I don't know what to do, I don't really know which direction to go. I don't really know what's supposed to happen. In reality, I didn't know what's supposed to happen. There are all kinds of people who said all kinds of things about what's supposed to happen. I didn't know. There were many of them, and I didn't know if they were supposed to happen at some point. Who said it was supposed to happen now? And I realized that was quite an arrogance to believe I know what's supposed to happen. That for me to say, let me do this so I can get to this state, means that I believe I know what I should be experiencing in the next hour or so. And I realized, I don't know. I didn't know it was good. So how will I know what's supposed to happen? And it is those times that it seemed that something happened. Something opened up. Things opened up, and usually what happened is I recognize what's the truth of the moment, what was happening. Could be anything simple or deep, didn't matter. But it's more like when I gave up, I felt my helplessness, recognized I didn't really know what to do or where to go, and accepted that. Things opened up, and I began to see some kind of truth about myself or about the environment or the reality that I am in. And that then gave me some indication, connected me with my original sort of unconscious or semi-conscious desire to find out what is the truth in its own. What is the truth of reality? And I saw that at those times, really what brought about that condition was particularly the heart involvement, the heartfelt attitude of really wanting to see, to recognize, to find out what the truth is. And I wanted to find it out because that is really what I wanted. And it was a very intimate, personal thing that I, myself, wanted to know the truth at this moment, not because anybody said this is the right thing. It wasn't because it was going to be enlightenment. It wasn't because I was getting close to God. It wasn't accomplishing anything. It was just the truth. What is the truth of this moment? You see? And I saw that when, from my heart, I really felt that that's what I really want. I recognized that's what I really want. And I didn't want it to get someplace, to accomplish something, to get enlightened. I was just wanting that truth without knowing. I didn't even know what it is. I wanted to see what is my condition, what is the truth of my condition right now. And I felt very strongly about it that I really wanted that, desired that strongly, passionately. When I felt that, in the midst of recognizing I didn't know what the truth is, what it's supposed to be, that the truth manifested itself. And the truth can be what made me feel the way I was feeling, some kind of psychological thing, some understanding of situation in my life that put me in that condition, or as time went on, some deeper thing about who I am or what I am and what's the reality that really I'm living in and perceiving. So that became sort of the inner core of what I call now inquiry. That's the center of it, which is the heartfelt desire and interest to know, to recognize, to experience, to find out what is the truth of life, what is the truth of my situation, You see, I can't even formulate the question completely because I don't know what it is I want to know. I can't say what I didn't feel. For instance, I knew about the practice of asking, "Who am I?" I couldn't ask that question. I didn't know whether that was the relevant question. You see, I was in some sense that ignorant at that time. Some people already know that they need to find out, who they are, and I heard it from teachers, whatever. But personally, for me, I didn't really know. It was like the question was, it's a question that couldn't be formulated. Like, I want to know, I want to see, I want to experience, but I didn't know what, you see. So there was, but that I didn't know what turned out to be the openness, part of the openness that I recognized a few years later was necessary for the truth, whatever happens to be the truth, to manifest itself. So I realized that part of the reason why I had difficulty with the various practices is that they were not exactly I didn't feel personal about them. It's like it was an impersonal teaching, You go sit and meditate, or you go do this practice, and everybody's supposed to do it, and you do it because your teacher told you to do it, or you read about it in the book, but my heart wanted to, my heart believed, I actually had a lot of faith in my teachers and in the teaching, but someplace my heart wasn't involved. When I found out what my heart was involved with, it turned out my heart, what really felt completely, fully was, I really wanted to find out what's supposed to happen, what is reality, what is the truth? Is it my truth, the world truth, everybody's truth? Well, I didn't know. So there was some kind of a desire, a loving desire, a passionate desire to find out the truth, and also an openness to what the truth might be. I did not have any idea what the truth going to be. Of course, I'm not saying that all the time it felt that way. Most of the time, of course, I had ideas. My mind was full of ideas. But those times when things opened up, I was free from those ideas of what the truth is supposed to happen. When I was free from those ideas, from those positions, from those beliefs, there was a general openness that turned out was necessary for reality to reveal something that was not just true about reality, was relevant to me personally in the situation I was in the moment. So the truth that revealed itself was very specific, very personal, very attuned, very timely. It's like if turned out sometimes about my relationship with somebody, sometimes about what I want to do, what I'm doing in my life, sometimes about how I felt. And it's like at the beginning I didn't know which one was relevant, but being open is like something came up and revealed the truth, and I recognized in some very direct, intimate, and personal way, oh, yeah, that fits, that makes sense. It was like a fit, and it made sense, opened up things, relaxed me, contented something in my heart and in my mind at the same time. My mind felt satisfied, my heart felt contented, and I felt touched in some kind of deep way. It's like somebody sort of read my unconscious and sort of showed me exactly what I needed before I knew it myself. And it took a while, several years, before I recognized as this kind of opening continued to happen and to expand and to deepen, that particular attitude, that personal interest and love for the truth, open-ended truth, and for the truth on its own, not wanting anything from it. Not like I'm praying to God, I want something from God. It's not like I'm meditating to get enlightened. It's not wanting anything completely. It's just the truth itself without knowing what the truth is. that when that happened, when I was in that place, something came up, something opened up, and revealed the truth, and I recognized in time that there was some guidance in it. Like the truth that was arising wasn't just universal truth. Right? The truth was arising was very specific to my situation at the time, very personal, and specific to the time and place and the people I was involved with, and took into consideration all the situation at that time. And so, even though it did not correspond with the ideas that I had in my mind, that I was fed about what reality, ultimate reality, enlightenment, all of that, didn't correspond with those, it was satisfying in some kind of deep way that in time I learned to trust it, and to trust it a lot more than what any teaching, what any teacher has said or says. I recognize that is telling me something is precisely and exactly personal to me, and it worked for those situations. It's not like having a wonderful experience, but having an experience that solved something, that resolved something. I saw something about reality, and some of my situation got resolved, got finished, got discharged. You see, it wasn't just experiencing something transcendental. And it continued, and in time, I learned that kind of practice, or let's say that kind of way of being, way of living, which is to recognize I already know what's going to happen next. Like even when at some point the truth that revealed was ultimate reality and its absoluteness and majesty and all that, I realized at some point, even though that is the case, I never know whether I'm supposed to be experiencing it in the next hour. Who said? I didn't know. Even though it is my ultimate nature of everything, who said that should happen from now on forever and ever? I realized it wasn't happening that way. But what was arising was always something that addressed my personal situation, even though as time passed, my personal situation, for it to be resolved, for it to be understood, to be clarified, became more and more connected with more universal and fundamental truths. Like it started with a simple thing, but as things opened up and the truth began to manifest more and more, to resolve some of the situation, there was the truth that arose was deeper and more fundamental, and kept going deeper and more fundamental and more universal until it revealed so much truth, so many dimensions, so many things, facets about reality, I can't even remember them. No. That's why I put them in books, because I know I'm not going to remember them. But the thing, really, that's what's important, about the book that just came out. It's about the practice of inquiry, how to inquire. And it is Spacecruiser Inquiry because it's not just any regular inquiry, because everybody inquires. We're Western-minded people, where science developed and research happens. So we all know here about inquiry. Everybody does inquiry of various kinds. But this turned out to be inquiry of a certain kind, which, when I investigated it, was not a difference in kind, but the same kind of inquiry that we use in our scientific methods, in our Western mind, in our logical and philosophical analysis, except taken all the way, done more completely. In the sense, the heart has to be completely involved in it. It's not like I'm investigating something because I'm given a grant. I'm investigating because it's really a hot question for me. I really want to find out, you see. So I would say it took some years before I recognized first that there was a guidance that was happening, and that guidance was invoked through a certain natural attitude of the consciousness, which is just curiosity, pure, simple curiosity about what is, what's going on, what's happening, with a curiosity that is fueled by some kind of a love, passion, a love and desire to want to come face to face with, come in contact with the truth that I'm curious about. And then as this thing began to reveal itself more and more, I realized in time it is quite a practice. It's quite a way of being, a way of living. That is one thing about it I liked very much, and I appreciated. And as a result, I was wholeheartedly into it. It did not feel artificial. I did not have to sit in any posture. I did not have to visualize anything. I didn't have to emit any unusual sounds. I was just doing what I'm doing, wherever I am. Sitting, eating my meal, talking to a friend, taking a shower, driving my car, working. I'm just, whatever the experience is, I'm curious about it, what it is, what's the truth of it. And with a heart open in a loving way, in the sense of really wanting to know what is the truth of this experience, what is the truth of this impression or this perception, which is turned out the natural thing that we have, many of us have at least some of the time, and we tend to have it more as little kids. You know, as little kids, they're so curious, they're asking you 1,000 questions, a minute, right? And what's this, what's that, how does this work, when did that happen, how did I come about, all these things. And because the child is really curious, want to find out. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like a reactivation of the same thing, but it's maturation, development beyond the child stage, into more of a mature, adult-like interest, which means there is in it then patience and tolerance and compassion in it, and tenderness and openness, and that child might not have as much. And the thing, as I said, what I like about it's natural. We all have that. It is a matter of recognizing it and allowing it to sort of emerge, allowing it to develop. And one thing I saw is that attitude, when it happens, when it matures, it becomes like an invitation. It's like an invocation. It's like a summoning of some kind of guidance that at the beginning I didn't even know existed, but became clear at some point why the truth I was finding out was very specific and personal and attuned. But like there was some kind of guidance. It wasn't from somebody, not from something, just from some of the manifestation of my nature, of my being. That's what it turned out to be. Although at the beginning, when the guidance first appeared, it seemed some kind of such sublime, some kind of sacred kind of presence, some kind of exquisite and magnificent kind of descent into the consciousness. Like pure awareness, pure consciousness, pure presence, manifesting, appearing in the awareness as this completely pure, completely, absolutely undefiled, unobscured presence with exquisiteness and transparency and intelligence and purity. And it seemed, as in time I learned, that this presence that arose was 100% absolutely dedicated for my well-being, for my best interest, dedicated absolutely, spontaneously, automatically, to guide my consciousness to find out all the truth that I specifically, personally need. And that it's like completely specific, completely precise guidance. It wasn't like guidance about work or guidance about past times, past lives. It was, it's like, turned out it is like a messenger from the ultimate truth, manifesting as a purity and consciousness, taking my consciousness to that ultimate truth, but taking me to that ultimate truth through the gradual resolution of my life situation, so that I get to see, experience, and understand as fully, as clearly as possible all the detail, the specifics of my mind, of my consciousness, of my history, of my life, what I want or I don't want, what's working, what's not working, all of it understood in a very clear, precise way. And through that clarification, the consciousness opens up to find at some point when these things are resolved, here I am, the source of all that exists. This vast, peaceful stillness and majesty. But so the experience of this ground of being, or the transcendent truth, or the true nature of everything, is known by many people, many traditions. There are many methods about it, many techniques. And actually getting close to that helped me see how the various techniques, but sort of some of the logics behind them, how they work. But the way it has happened to me was not through those, but through this gradual unraveling, gradual opening up of through understanding myself, and understanding my life in its various details. In a way, as I understand it, it begins to open up, begins to get lighter and more transparent. And the more I understand, the more transparent and the lighter and the emptier, until things are so empty, so transparent, so there are no things in the way, that the ultimate truth, the ultimate reality is just seen for what it is, experienced as it is. And that, at some point, I realized that guidance and the truth that was emerging through that guidance, was not just for me personally. I realized at some point that I was actually some kind of a guinea pig. And I was taken somehow through this particular path, to learn that path, because I was to give it to others who might also resonate with it, right? Not to supplant anything, not to displace anything, but as another way, another thing that may speak to certain people, that might be of help for them. And I realized at some point that much of the knowledge that I was getting, much of the understanding, experience, a lot of it wasn't just for me. And at some point I realized I had a debt to pay, basically. I was given all of this, and I had to pay back. And at that time, it's not I had to, it's more like out of gratitude to pay back. So that's why my service has always been to serve that guidance and the truth, the ultimate truth that is the source of that guidance. And what that guidance has shown me many times is that ultimate truth wants to manifest itself through all beings, so that guidance, that truth, that ultimate truth, becomes aware of itself in the midst of our life. That it really, this truth, does not just want to be like the sky. It wants to have arms and legs and walks. It wants to have a tongue and taste apricots. You see, it wants to have a throat to talk to other people, but it wants to do it while still being that sky god, that vastness. And it's sort of, the way it happened, the way I understand it, is that I was somehow guided to see that, and even my original feeling of wanting to see the truth independent of teachings, independent of other sources, to see what is there. That was already the beginning of that guidance. It wasn't me, personally, my mind. My mind was too naive, too ignorant to really come up with something like that, you see. So as a result, now we have a teaching, we have a school, we have a particular practice that now we integrate with various practices like meditation, other things, because I have some understanding of them much more than I did before. And now, not only that, many of my students do them better than me. See? So that particular inquiry, really what it does, it is the usual inquiry that we all know about. However, it is that inquiry connected with true nature, connected with the absolute truth by manifesting its own qualities, its own perfections. So we are curious because it turned out curiosity is a manifestation of the playful joyousness of the ultimate reality. You see, and we love to find out the truth because this ultimate reality loves to reveal its reality, its truth, its treasure. You see, and we are patient and determined to find out the truth because this determination is nothing but the will of that truth to come through and become conscious of itself. So really, it's like this, when I said, this inquiry is matter taken it to its fullness, to completeness, means just recognizing that the usual attitude of truth, not truth, or usual attitude of inquiry that we have, they come from very deep truth. They come from the dimension of true nature itself, through some kind of its inherent timeless qualities that manifest through our consciousness as certain leanings and tendencies and capacities and qualities that when we go along with, let them develop, inquiry becomes Spacecruiser Inquiry. In the sense, it takes off, it becomes accelerated, it opens up, it takes us to other dimensions that we did not know about before. Okay, so let's see if there are any questions.
The word space cruiser implies leaving the planet to me.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Good, interesting question. The way I understand it, which is something you read in the book, is that I said a space cruiser. I did not say it's an airplane, for instance. The reason because our experience, our usual experience, tends to revolve in a certain orbit. We have a habitual way of experiencing things, where our experience basically repeats the same elements in different permutations or combinations. So we stay in what I see as a gravity-bound orbit, right? So we never get to see things from a wider perspective. We never go to other dimensions of experience. That's the usual thing. So the space cruiser means, yes, we need to leave gravity, basically. We need to leave the inertia that we usually moving in. And we need to break out of this particular gravity, or if you go in a certain orbit, you just go around the same thing. You see it over and over again, maybe with slight variation. So to really see something completely different, to go to a different dimension, you have to break out of that orbit. And for that, you need a spaceship. So in that sense, the sci-fi language in the book is related to the question of inquiry. Okay.
Thank you for your teaching. Have you found, since you have learned this path, that it's become easier to teach, easier for other people to learn? And I have a couple of questions that follow from that. Does this change the way that we might relate with children? Does it change the way we might relate with our enemies?
Well, I hope it made me a better teacher. I think it did, in the sense that it turned out that the guidance that I was talking about is a teacher. The guidance is what's sometimes called the inner teacher, which in time, through the following that guidance, there is a gradual integration and embodiment of that guidance, which means whoever embodies it can become a guide for others. It was guiding me. As a result, I guide other people so that they learn about their own guidance, and hopefully at some point they begin to find their own guidance. And does it change how we relate to children? I mean, for me, it gives me more insight, more understanding, right, in terms of how to relate to children. It does. Some of it might be changed from what some people do, but a lot of it is really more common sense, and it's more like a lot of it has to do with recognizing what is the consciousness, the human consciousness that actually goes through childhood and that matures and develops. What are its properties, what are its capacities, and how to best be attuned to those properties and capacities so that they develop in an optimal way. In that sense, it gives some kind of guidance about that. In terms about our enemies, it's not usually language I use, but it's what I learned. It's not just enemies, about all people. Everybody is like me, in the sense we all tend to be lost, ignorant, have a hard time. We have so much trouble already from ourselves. We don't need anybody else to hate us. So really, so I learned, just like I like people to be kind to me and to consider me, I feel, I learned that that's how to relate to other people. And that everybody is really a manifestation of the truth. Everybody has the potential to know the truth as fully as possible. And everybody in their heart of hearts really want to know the truth. They might not know that. I didn't know it for a long time. And so my tendency is I'd like to do what I can to help with that. And also recognizing, really, I have very limited capacity in that at the same time. So in terms of relating to other people, I try not to help other people unless they ask me, and only in the way they contract with me. I don't impose anything on them, and I don't push them. And one thing I learned throughout the years, actually, one of the ways that the teaching of this school has developed, is that I learned that time kindness and openness and acceptance work a lot more than pushing and forcing and for people to be more real, be more themselves. So I recommend those qualities. I mean, just think of how you want people to relate to you. I mean, it's very easy in some sense. Yeah. Over there in the middle, will you stand up, please?
Hamid, I was attracted to this teaching, hearing you speak here years before, and I appreciate the form of the school and the structure of the school, and then hearing you speak about practices and resisting practices and finding your own method or your own inquiry. Could you speak to the tendency, or my tendency anyway, to start to relate to the form and kind of predict what I'm going to find in my inquiry because I've read ahead in the book a bit?
Yeah. Well, one important distinction. I did not feel I wanted to find my own practice. I wasn't looking for my own practice. It wasn't like I didn't want somebody else, I wanted my own. It has nothing to do with that. It's more like it felt many of these things were artificial to me, something added on, right? And in some kind of unconscious way, I wanted something natural that came up by itself, but I didn't need to do anything extra to do it. But it's just a natural tendency. So I wasn't looking for my own thing. I wasn't trying to distinguish myself, set myself apart from anybody else. Anything that would have worked, I would have welcomed, right? Anything. I mean, I wish I could have done the meditation, right? I had nothing, against it that way. It's more like I couldn't do it, and at some point, I realized I couldn't do it partly because it felt as an addition to life. So for me, it seemed like something that naturally happens, right? To attune myself to something that is already naturally part of being a human being in everyday life and allowing that potential to develop. That's what happened.
My question is about my tendency to doubt my experience because I recognize it's similar to the experience I've already heard about. So, that's that. So I don't trust it at times because I don't know if I'm just, is there some self-fulfilling?
Yes, that's a good question, actually, and many people have that difficulty. And it's more like, it's true, I had to go through that, and it's not easy, and you'll have doubt, and unavoidable that you'll have doubt, and it's not bad that you have doubt. It's like try to satisfy your doubt. What I suggest, explore what makes you have the doubt. Find out for yourself. Ascertain for yourself. Not, so you're having this experience, and it sounds like something you read in a book, and then you're doubting whether it is real or not. Maybe you made it up. For me, what is real feels real. What's real, the truth, shows itself as the truth regardless. It might be like something else. Many of the things that came up for me that I learned turned out very similar to many things I've read, for instance. Right? So the fact that they were similar or not similar is not really the question. The question is, how do I feel about it? Does it speak to me? Does it touch me? Do I recognize it myself? And that may require some kind of an investigation of finding out my own attitude and positions and history about those things. Meaning, the inquiry that's in the book that I learned is not only inquiring into the question is about, the inquiry always include the inquirer, the person who's asking the question. The person who's having the reaction or the desires is always part of the inquiry. So I think if you include that in your inquiry, right, in your investigation, where does this doubt come from? What does that have to do? Maybe it's coming from some kind of truth that will be important for you to see.
Thank you.
And the truth, who knows? Might be a psychodynamic truth about relation with your father, or might be some deep truth about reality that you sort of intuitively know, right? But you haven't consciously known yet. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I mean, you talked about the importance at the beginning of the heartfelt desire. Others use the word longing. As almost the fuel that enables one to go into the inquiry. To what extent, when I experience the desire and longing, then some sense of suffering may come with that too. Have you found in your own path a way to deal with the emotional aspect that may come with that? Where does the opening is that enables me not to be attached to the emotion that comes up?
Right. The emotional dimension is a very important part of this inquiry I'm talking about. Meaning the desire, it has to be heartfelt, first of all. It can't be just, I am curious in my mind, mentally, or cerebrally curious. Like my heart has to really want to know. And really, when we investigate, we find out that the heart really wants to know. Everybody's heart wants to know, but I might not be in touch with it. And to be in touch with it, I have to really process my feelings, my emotion. I have to have my emotions available to me. I have to understand them. They have to discharge. The heart has to be open in some kind of way, some kind of deep way for that love to manifest. You see. Many of us don't necessarily feel that love directly, not because it isn't there. It is natural that your heart will want to see the truth because that love is the same thing as the love of the Absolute to reveal itself. It's the same thing, absolutely. There's no two loves. There's only one love, experienced from one end or another. But to feel that, we have to go through love stuff, love thing. And it includes feeling our longing, our pain, our suffering. And at some point, when you begin to, at least when I began experiencing the love itself, the love for the truth, as it is, for itself, it's like, I don't really care. I realized what I felt. I didn't care whether there was suffering, pain, fear, terror. I mean, the kind of terrors I went through, and the fears, and the heartaches, and the wounding, and the disintegration, and I went through. I mean, I could fill a box with it. You know, I don't talk much about it, but it's like the more we feel that love, the more we feel that true dedication, which is, turns out at some point, is the love of the truth itself, to reveal itself, because the truth is inherently, naturally self-revealing. And that tendency to self-reveal is this dynamism, that force within the Absolute that wants to reveal itself to whatever can be aware of it. You see? So when we feel that, first to get there, we need to access our emotion, be able to feel our emotion. We need to be able to process them to some degree, and be able to tolerate them, be able to accept them, be able to understand them. And at some point, like it's not an issue. This path I'm talking about does not have much to do with the liberation from suffering. It has to do with the love of the truth. You see, it's a different thing. The path that has to do with liberation from suffering comes out of compassion. You see, out of kindness, which is there. It's not, I'm against it. But what I'm talking about, the inquiry I'm talking about, has to do with really liking the truth. It turns me on. It's wonderful. I feel happy about when I see the truth. I get all, that's it. When I feel the truth, see that whatever it is, any level, I'm just beyond myself. That's it. That's what my heart wants, you see. And then, who cares whether sometimes there's pain, there's difficulties in the world, in my life, or inside myself. And of course, if you read about the various people who've gone through some kind of depth in their process, and for everybody go through that. Most people, at least. Some people might be unusually open from the beginning, but most of us, we have so much accretion of stuff, so much ignorance, so many veils, so many illusions and delusions and positions and belief and reaction, object relations, and beliefs about ourselves. I mean, there are millions and trillions of them. I mean, it's a lot. And in the process, we have to tolerate it and let it come out. And so much of what the truth we find out is those kind of truth at the beginning. Finding out how big a jerk I am, how scared I am, how selfish I am, how mad I am, I hate this person. All these truths at the beginning are very painful for us. Or how much I feel I'm terrible, I'm inferior, nobody likes me, nobody likes. All these things, we have to really, these are much of the pain. Until, of course, as we go through, we get to the actual structures of the self. And those, to see those and let them go are scary in a different way. It's more, we're going to die, we're going to fall apart, we're going to go crazy. It's terrifying. And if we're aware, if we're in touch with that love in us, it's like, if I love it, just like when you're totally in love with somebody, doesn't matter what happened, what's going to happen. The important thing is that you want to be with them. People tell you, what's going to happen to your job? What's going to happen to this? What's going to happen to that? When you're totally in love, it doesn't matter. These are irrelevant to some sense. They're peripheral, you see. You can't even think that way. So we get a courage with that love, you see. It brings with it a courage and a determination. But definitely, yes, I experienced a lot. I still experience some of those difficulties sometimes because I'm not completely 100% enlightened, you see. But that's the natural thing. We all have to go through that because that's what's in the way. That's why we don't see the truth. It's not like we don't see the truth because the truth is subtle. That's part of it. But really, when we get down to it, that's a small part of it. The biggest part of it is that there are many things we don't want to see, things that are painful, too scary, you see, too unknown. We feel too alone, too much into some kind of abyss. We don't want to go there. It's not because of how subtle it is. The subtlety, when it comes, it's delightful. You see, that's the wonderful thing about it. But to experience, for instance, at some point, to recognize yourself as absolute truth is like you have to see something pretty scary, like I don't really exist, never existed. Not only that, nobody really exists the way they think, you see. And I have been believing this big lie and story about myself and everybody believe it, and at some point I realized it's not true. So what does that mean, you see? And not only that, those people all around here are not here. They're not what they think they are. So, first of all, I'm in big trouble. What's going to happen to me? Not only that, I'm going to be all by myself. You see? So, think like that. It can be, terrifying. So, that's nothing new. I mean, that's been commented upon and discussed. There's nothing unique or different about this particular work. Yes.
You followed your absolute own path. Is it possible for us to follow absolutely our own paths and still follow your path? In other words, if you had met yourself 20 years ago, would you have joined, or would you have said, I've got to take my own path?
You see, that's the kind of question that arises. I was not trying to find my own path. I was trying to find the truth, what the truth is. I didn't care whose path I was following. And the path I was following, I have nothing against them. I love the teachers, love the teaching. I tried to follow them, I couldn't do it. You see, it's not because I wanted to be unique and different, my own and not the other. I never felt that way. So it is not a question following my own path or not following my own path. It's like, what is it that resonates with me? If you need to find out personally for yourself. Maybe some path, some Vedanta path, some Buddhist path, might be the right thing for you. Might resonate with it in such a way that you feel things open up for you that way. But you need to find out for yourself. So it's like the teaching here is not like I should follow my own path. It's more you need to listen to your own ascertainment of truth. Whatever path you follow, you need to ascertain it for yourself, that is the truth. Like many people, for instance, in the work I do, they might experience actually the ultimate truth. You'll be surprised how many people experience the absolute, and they're experiencing it, and it's wonderful. And then some people tell me, "What's this going to do for me?" That's not what they were looking for. You see, it doesn't matter what I say. That person doesn't get it. It might take me 10 years of working with them to open up at some point to find out, oh yeah, that's really what matters. You see, but for that, so what I'm saying is that the idea is not to follow my own path, but to be honestly personal about my own ascertainment of what is true, what is real. Because those paths exist for objective, real reasons. All the paths that developed are paths that speak to lots of people, you see. Other paths, otherwise they're not paths, they're not really teachings. And if we believe that everybody should follow their own unique path that's different from everybody else, that means that the teaching that exists at the present time in the human race are not real teachings. See, they're only Buddha's path should be just for Buddha. You see, that's not the truth. Many people have found a great deal by following the Buddhist path in the front here. So there are two people, one after the other. Yeah.
Thank you. I really don't know too much about this teaching yet, and I was wondering if there's a place within it for spiritual transmission, or if it's primarily an intellectual process. And if you could speak to that a little bit.
There is no real teaching if there is no transmission. So definitely, transmission is, what is transmission? Transmission means that the teacher, when they're teaching, they are in the condition they're teaching about. And the students open up to receive that. So the words should be carried by a transmission, usually. Yeah. So that is something also for you to ascertain, in fact, when you're going to a particular teaching, because there might be a transmission, but that transmission, you might not be receiving it, for instance, and there might be various reasons for it. So to really find your own, what's really works for you is not a simple thing. It takes time, takes a while for you to investigate, to experiment with things, see then what really works for you best. Ask your friends and people, observe what happens to them, how they treat you and treat other people and all these. So transmission is important, the teaching is important, but the results of the teaching is also important.
What's the warrant for this truth? I can get all sorts of guidance and feel absolutely convinced in the moment.
Yeah.
And then find myself afraid to tell other people about it, among other things, for fear that they'll think I'm an absolute nut in the larger culture sense.
Right.
And so the question of, you get a deep, absolute feeling of truth, insight.
Yeah.
How do you get past the sense of, well, I might be deluded, I might have still lots and lots of films of unreality between me and the absolute truth and blah, 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 on and on.
That's part of the process. It happens to everybody, sure. And I myself have gone through that a lot. In the sense, there was doubt for a long time. in the sense that there is the truth, truth arises, and I see it as the truth, but maybe the next day I'm not completely sure, you see. And the process needs to continue and need to expand and to open up and deepen. So part of where the certainty comes from is the feeling of truth that you mentioned, the truth sense that we have, but also that truth opens up to deeper truth. And it keeps opening up to deeper truth. And not, for me, it doesn't only open up to deeper truth, it also changes me, transforms me, and transforms my life in a way that corresponds with that truth. So all these really are important. But that might not remove the doubt. And the doubt can be coming from real sources in the sense, yeah, there might be veils I'm not seeing through. Right? That might be true. And then I want to investigate. If I'm doubting, well, maybe there's veil, I say, well, maybe there is. Let me look. Let me find out. And it might take me a few years to find out. But also sometimes the doubt might come not necessarily because there are more veils. Sometimes, frequently, with many people, doubt comes from their mind. The fact that they were led to doubt themselves, some people. Many of us were not trusted or were discounted or were treated in such a way that we couldn't trust ourselves, had always to doubt ourselves. And that might be the source of doubt sometimes. So by investigating what the doubt about, where it's come from, it could take us to whatever source it comes from. But it is a normal thing that there will be doubt. And not only doubt, fear that it might be crazy, what people are going to think, you see. And sometimes people are crazy. Sometimes, what people say, somebody says to somebody else, people think you're out of your mind. And sometimes they're not out of their mind, they're true. And sometimes they are out of their mind. Haven't you? I mean, there's all kinds of stories in history about both. You see. So you take your chances. Yeah, okay.
You mentioned that the process of inquiry is something that can go on during the day, while you're driving your car, while you're going through any experience. Right. It may be in the book, which I don't know, but can you say something about how that happens in a moment, whatever's happening, what the spirit is or the practice of inquiry?
It's more like recognizing that things are not as they seem. So what I'm experiencing, I don't believe that I know or understand it. In fact, I'm feeling I'm mad at this person. I don't take at face value that I'm really mad at that person and mad for the reasons I think. I acknowledge that might be whole other stories. And because I know it could be a whole other story, I'm curious to find out what is the story. See? So there's always something happening that we don't completely understand. And if we think we completely understand it, we're in trouble, actually. But at least we could begin there. Why do I believe I always know what is going on? Many of us think that way. We always know what was going on. If I think that way, that's a good place to inquire, too. You see, maybe I do know what's going on. And maybe I do know what's going on in the sense, yes, there's this person talking and I'm feeling this way. All that might be true, but it might turn out to be not the whole thing. Maybe this person who's talking is really not a person who's talking. Maybe it's an alien. Right? So basically, it's a matter of some kind of humility, some kind of a place of recognition of limitations. Recognizing that we don't really know much, that what we know is very little. Right? And since there's a natural tendency to want to be near the truth, to find the truth, if we just recognize that we don't know and there's something happening, at some point that the curiosity will be activated. And also, it's not an either-or thing. It's a process. Things can build on themselves. There's a momentum that can happen. Things can deepen, intensify. The curiosity itself can develop. The love for the truth can be allowed to emerge and deepen itself. We can have more patience, more determination, more openness, more willingness to accept our unknowing, our ignorance. All these are developmental things, you see. Okay. So this will be the last question.
I am just started to learn some of your work and read your books, and the thing that I keep getting stuck on is the relationship between self-image and essence, and the essence qualities. And I'm wondering that if the self-image is dissolved, or you could see through the conceptual nature of it in order to be present, in order to have your true nature qualities present, isn't there something that your true nature and your essence is still being experienced through, in terms of form, in terms of a different kind of self-image? Or that's kind of where I'm confused.
Yeah, so it's more like our normal experience is characterized or determined by the fact that we look at ourselves and look at the world through concepts and images of things. We don't experience things directly. So the more we see through these images or those concepts, the more we're seeing things more directly, more immediately, right? And so it's not an either-or thing. It's can be a gradual thing, that the more of those veils or most of those concepts of self-image we see through, the more we experience ourselves and the world as it is. And sometimes we might experience some deep truth, as you mentioned, essential qualities, for instance. And it's true, we have maybe penetrated a particular identity, and which allowed us to see through nature and this particular quality. But usually at the beginning, there's still an overall other kind of images that we're looking at things through. And that's why we're just seeing one particular quality arising in this place, for instance, instead of seeing the nature of all of existence, because there's still forms and images. So, at least in the work we do, it's a gradual thing of seeing through them. And at some point, when we say there are no images, we see one can experience oneself without images, without concepts. Does not mean there are no forms thing. It doesn't mean people lose their arms and legs and and become sort of ephemeral. It doesn't mean that. It's more like those forms continue to exist, but it's more like you're looking at them from the perspective of their elementary particles. You know how the physical body is composed of atoms, and the atoms composed of elementary particles. So all of this universe is composed of elementary particles. So you can see the elementary particle, and you could perceive from the perspective of the elementary particles. So you could see the ground of everything, the nature of everything. But at the same time, that doesn't eliminate the bodies. You could still see the body, but you recognize there are manifestations of the elementary particles. Because you continue to see the elementary particle, even though you see the forms. So what happens is that you see the final truth and the usual forms at the same time, completely inseparable. It's more like the forms that you see become totally transparent. You see, not transparent in the sense I look at the person and see the person behind them. I don't mean that. I mean transparent. I look at the person and I see the nature that is its depth. See, and then you could look everywhere, you see the nature that is the depth of everything. So the forms don't go away, but those forms are not images in our mind. Those forms are reality itself is manifesting. The barriers are the images that we create in our own mind, that we develop, and we use as lenses through which to look at the world and at ourselves. Those we need to see through. Those can't dissolve. But the forms in the world don't dissolve. don't go away, you see. Although I can experience myself as the sky, as an empty space, nothing there, that doesn't mean the body is gone. You see, it's more like the body seems to be made out of space. You see, made out, it's empty and light, and almost like light, for instance. So is everybody else. So the form, the shape, but the shape of the body actually is not an image in my mind, although I can use that image to look through it myself. But if I don't look at myself through the image of the body, what happens is that I don't experience myself to have a shape. I don't have a shape. I don't have a form, right? And to know the shape of the body, I have to touch it or look at it. See, but the consciousness resides in some place that's shapeless. You see. So I think this should do it for tonight, and I hope that my attempt is just to give you an idea about inquiry, which is what the subject matter of the book. So it's just a little bit of an introduction, really, what the subject matter of the book is about. The book has a lot more details, and the book basically goes through how this inquiry relates to true nature, to the ultimate truth.
This has been a presentation of Diamond Heart and Training Institute. Audio, video, and monographs, also known as DHAT AVM. For a catalog and ordering information for other tapes and videos of talks by A.H. Almaas, please call area code 510-841-1283. Go in truth and live in presence.